I don't usually linger in coffee shops. Most days I grab a paper cup, thumb the lid on, and walk out. But lately, I've been sitting here longer than I need to, pretending to read, staring at the same line of a book, watching the clock behind the counter move slower than it should. I tell myself it's because of the quiet. But it's not. It's her. She works mornings mostly. Mid-40s maybe, though I've never said the number out loud. She has a way of setting cups down carefully, like the sound matters. Like she doesn't want to break whatever silence you're carrying. She knows my order now, black coffee, no sugar. Sometimes she adds, "You'll regret not sweetening it one day," with this half-smile that makes me wonder if she's teasing me or warning me. I always laugh too quickly, like I'm afraid she'll take it back. The first time I noticed her, really noticed her, was nothing special. She pushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear while ringing someone up. Simple, unremarkable. But the gesture stayed with me longer than it should have. I thought about it that night, staring at my phone, typing and erasing the same half-text to no one in particular. Now it's routine. I sit at the table by the window. She passes by, nods, maybe asks about my book. I answer too fast or too slow, never in between. She has this calm rhythm, and I'm always a beat off. This morning, she brought the mug over herself instead of calling my name at the counter. She set it down, smoothed the napkin under it with the edge of her hand, like it mattered to her that it looked neat. "You always read the same page," she said. I glanced down. She was right, the same corner folded, the same sentence half underlined. I hadn't noticed. "Maybe it's a good line," I said. My voice cracked, which embarrassed me, but she just tilted her head, like she was deciding whether or not to believe me. There was a pause then. Long enough that I noticed the way her fingers tapped against the mug handle before she pulled them back. "You'll get stuck if you keep rereading," she said finally, and then she walked away. I didn't know what she meant. About books, or about me. I sat there until my coffee went cold. Around me, people came and left, chairs scraped, the door kept chiming. She moved behind the counter, tying her apron tighter, laughing quietly with another barista. I watched too long, I know I did. But when her eyes lifted, just for a second, I thought maybe she let me. Later, when I left, I told myself I wouldn't come back tomorrow. That I needed to stop building routines out of strangers. But by the time I reached the corner, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't know. "You forgot your book." I stopped walking. Looked down at my empty hands, the absence of weight where it should have been. And then, another line appeared before I could think what to reply. "I kept it behind the counter. Come get it when you like." No emoji. No signature. Just words, quiet and steady, the way she places cups on tables. I stood there longer than I should have, phone still in my hand, cars sliding past, people brushing shoulders. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't want to walk away. I went back the next morning, though I told myself I wouldn't. I could have lived without the book, I'd read the same page a dozen times already, but the thought of her keeping it behind the counter unsettled me. Like part of me had been left in her hands. She spotted me as soon as I walked in. No smile this time, just a small nod, as if she'd expected me to show up eventually. She didn't make me ask. She pulled the book from beneath the counter, slid it across. "You're forgetful," she said. "Or maybe distracted," I answered. That earned the slightest curve of her mouth, gone before I could be sure it was there. I sat at my usual table, though the place was half empty. I didn't open the book. I just let it rest in front of me, fingers drumming lightly against the cover. After a few minutes, she came over with a cup of tea. "Not my order. Not coffee. Try this," she said. I frowned. "You're changing my routine." "Good. Routines are dangerous." Her voice carried more weight than it should have. I almost asked why, but she stayed standing there until I wrapped my hands around the cup. It was warmer than I expected, the steam soft against my face. She didn't sit, just leaned a little, close enough for me to catch the faint scent of her perfume, something floral but tired, like it had faded over the hours. My son used to drink this when he was cramming for exams, she said suddenly. Said it kept him awake without making him jittery. I nodded, though I didn't know what to say. I thought of the word used to. I didn't ask where he was now. I just said, "It's good." And it was. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the way she looked at me as I said it, like she was measuring something, testing if I'd pass. The age difference sat between us then, unspoken. She was old enough to have a son who studied late into the night. I was young enough to be him. That thought should have cooled whatever was stirring in me, but instead it made me restless. I stayed longer than I meant to. We didn't talk much. She cleaned tables near mine, paused to wipe the same spot twice, listened when I said something trivial about the book. Every so often, our eyes met, and neither of us looked away fast enough. When I finally stood to leave, I slid the chair back too carefully, like I was afraid of breaking the moment. She reached for my cup, fingers brushing mine as she took it. The touch was nothing, a quick pass, the kind that happens 100 times a day in a place like this. But her eyes lingered. Just a fraction too long. I carried that with me as I stepped outside, the weight of it heavier than the book in my bag. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next week felt uneven, like the rhythm we'd found had slipped out of tune. She wasn't avoiding me, not exactly. But something in the air had shifted. One morning, I walked in and another barista, some college kid, took my order instead. She was there, behind the counter, but busying herself with receipts, wiping surfaces that didn't need wiping. She didn't look at me until the kid handed over my coffee. Our eyes met for half a second. Then she turned away. I sat at my table anyway. Opened the book, though I couldn't focus on a single word. Minutes stretched. She stayed on the other side of the counter, her back angled just enough to suggest she didn't want to be drawn in. Still, I caught her glance, once, twice, like she was checking if I was still there. By the time she came over, my coffee was nearly gone. She picked up the cup, too briskly, and said, "You should try a different place. Change of scenery." It wasn't a suggestion. It sounded almost like a warning. "Maybe I like this view," I said before I could stop myself. Her hands stilled on the cup. Just a beat. Then she walked it back to the counter without replying. The rest of the morning was silence. Not empty silence, loud silence, humming, sharp at the edges. I left without saying goodbye. That night, I kept replaying it. The shift in her tone. The way she wouldn't meet my eyes. I typed half a message, "Did I do something?" then erased it. Tried again, "I'll stay away if you want." Deleted that too. My screen stayed lit long after my thoughts blurred. The following day I didn't go. Or the day after. On the third I gave in. She looked surprised when I walked through the door, though she masked it quickly. The kid wasn't there this time. Just her. "You came back," she said. Quiet. "Forgot my routine," I answered. My voice lighter than I felt. She set my coffee down herself. Didn't pull away right away. Her fingers rested against the rim a second too long. Then, almost like she regretted it, she let go. I didn't move. She did. Sat across from me, wiping her hands on a towel though they were already dry. "I shouldn't," she started, then stopped. Pressed her lips together. Looked out the window instead of at me. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Shouldn't what?" Her shoulders rose, then fell. "It's complicated." I wanted to ask why. Wanted to push. But something in her face, something tired, something soft, kept me still. We sat like that, both holding words we didn't say. My hand twitched, almost reaching across the table. Hers did too, fingers brushing the edge of the napkin between us. For a moment, it felt inevitable, that the distance would collapse, that something would finally break. Then the door opened. A burst of cold air. Someone walked in. She pulled back, stood too quickly, nearly knocked the chair against mine. The moment was gone. But the trace of it, the almost, clung to me all the way home. It happened on a Wednesday evening, the kind of day that felt stretched thin. I passed the cafe late, long after it had closed, but the lights were still on. She was inside, wiping down the counters, apron tossed aside. I almost kept walking. I should have. But my feet slowed, then stopped. Before I could talk myself out of it, I tapped on the glass. She hesitated, then unlocked the door. "You shouldn't be here this late," she said, voice low but not sharp. "Neither should you." That got the smallest laugh out of her. A tired sound. She gestured me in, like it was easier than arguing. The place felt different at night, emptier, the hum of machines gone. She poured water into 2 glasses, slid one across the counter. We didn't move to the tables. Just leaned there, side by side, staring at the street outside. For a while neither of us spoke. Then she said, almost to herself, "I used to walk home with my husband every night. Even if we were fighting. Especially if we were fighting. Silence was better than distance." I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. "I didn't know you were married," I said finally. "Was." She traced the rim of her glass with her finger. "He left. Years ago." I wanted to ask why. I didn't. Instead, I said, "I don't like silence either." That made her turn her head. Her eyes caught mine, sharp for a second, then softening. The silence after that wasn't empty. It was heavy. Full. I set my glass down too hard. Water sloshed over the edge. "I don't." I stopped. Ran a hand through my hair. "I don't know why I keep showing up here. I tell myself I shouldn't, but..." Her hand moved, almost unconsciously, closer to mine on the counter. Not touching. Just near enough that I felt the space between us shrink. "You're too young," she whispered. "And I'm too..." She broke off, shaking her head. The word hung there anyway. Old. I wanted to tell her I didn't care. That the hours I sat here felt more alive than anything else in my day. That when she brushed my hand, when she looked too long, when she left me holding silence, it mattered more than it should. But all I said was, "Maybe it doesn't have to mean anything." Her breath caught. A sharp, quiet sound. She turned away, wiping the same clean spot on the counter again and again, like she could rub the moment out of existence. I stared at her hand. At how close it had come. My own hand twitched forward, then stilled. The air between us thinned, like one more word would undo everything. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Tried again. "Do you want me to stop coming here?" I asked. She froze, rag in her hand, shoulders tight. She didn't answer. The next morning, she wasn't there. I walked in expecting the usual, her half-smile, her quiet nod, but it was the kid behind the counter again. He looked half asleep, fumbling with the register. "Coffee?" he asked. I hesitated. "Where's..." I stopped before saying her name. "The woman who usually works mornings?" "Off today," he muttered. "Might be a while." I sat anyway, though the room felt wrong without her. The clock ticked louder, the air staler. I drank my coffee too fast, burned my tongue. Left early. She wasn't there the next day either. Or the one after. By the 4th morning, I told myself it didn't matter. That maybe it was good for me, breaking the habit, learning not to orbit someone else's gravity. But when I pushed the door open and finally saw her behind the counter again, the relief was sharp enough to embarrass me. Except she was different. Her hair was pulled back too tight, apron tied like armor. She didn't look up when I ordered. Didn't bring the mug herself. Just slid it across the counter without a word. I lingered at my table, waiting for her to drift over, to say something about the book, or the tea. She didn't. She stayed busy. Kept her hands moving, kept her eyes away. Finally, she came close enough to wipe down the next table. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak she said flatly, "My son's home." The words landed like a stone dropped in water. I nodded too quickly. That's good. He doesn't stay long. She kept wiping the table. But he'll be around. For a while. I wanted to ask what that had to do with me. Wanted to ask why her voice sounded like a warning. But I didn't. I just sat there, stomach tight, pretending to read. That night, I drafted a message. Do you want me to give you space? Deleted it. Wrote another, I miss our talks. Deleted that too. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The days blurred. Sometimes she was warm, almost as before. Sometimes she was distant, her eyes skating over me like I was just another face. The switch unsettled me more than outright rejection would have. At least rejection is clear. One evening I walked past the cafe and saw her through the glass, sitting with her son, laughing at something he said. Her head tilted back, the sound free and unguarded. I stopped on the sidewalk, half hidden by the reflection of passing cars. I could have gone in. Could have waved, pretended I was just passing by. But I didn't. My feet stayed rooted. My hands stayed in my pocket. The chair across from her was already taken. I turned and kept walking, the sound of her laughter fading behind me, swallowed by the night. I stopped going to the cafe. At first it was an excuse. Too much work, too tired, the weather. But after a week, it wasn't excuse anymore. It was choice. Distance felt safer than being pulled in and pushed away on repeat. Still, she stayed in my head. Little things. The way she folded napkins under mugs. How she tapped her fingers when she was thinking. How her voice dipped low when she said something she wasn't sure she should. One night, I found myself walking past her street. I don't know if I meant to. The houses looked quiet, lights low behind curtains. I should have kept walking, but when I saw her sitting on her front steps, hands folded, hair loose around her shoulders, I stopped. She noticed me right away. No surprise on her face. Just a faint sigh, like she'd been waiting for something she hoped wouldn't come. You shouldn't be here, she said. I know. Neither of us moved. The air smelled of rain, though the ground was dry. I shoved my hands in my pockets, rocking on my heels, searching for something ordinary to say. Nothing came. Finally, she stood and walked down one step. We were close enough now that I could see the fine lines near her eyes, the way her mouth pressed shut too tightly. My son's leaving tomorrow, she said. Back to school. I nodded. That's good. Silence. Long enough for the hum of a streetlight to fill it. Then softer. You stopped coming. I shrugged. Felt like maybe I should. Her gaze dropped to the ground. She rubbed her thumb over the edge of her palm, nervous. Probably the right thing. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. I shifted, half ready to leave. But before I could, she looked up again. I kept expecting you anyway, she said. It was barely more than a whisper. Like admitting it cost her something. I swallowed. My throat felt tight. I didn't know what you wanted from me. Her laugh was short, almost bitter. I don't know either. And there it was. The truth we'd both been circling. I took a step closer. I don't care about the rules. The gap. Whatever excuse you're giving yourself. My voice faltered. I just don't want to sit across the street pretending I don't want to see you. She closed her eyes, breathed in slowly, like the air itself burned. When she opened them, her face softened. Do you have any idea what this could ruin? She asked. Yeah, I said. That's why I'm scared. Another pause. Then she reached out, not much, just the briefest touch on my sleeve, her fingers curling like she wanted to hold on but didn't dare. It was nothing. And it was everything. We stood there, no more words left, just the sound of the streetlight buzzing, our breaths uneven. Finally, she whispered, Okay. Time didn't fix everything. It just moved forward. Days blurred into weeks, and the sharp edges of what almost happened between us softened into something quieter. Manageable. I started coming back to the cafe, not every day, not like before. Once a week, then twice. Always mornings. Always at the same table by the window. She never pretended it hadn't happened. But she didn't push either. We slipped into a rhythm again, though different this time. Slower. More careful. Some days it was just coffee. She'd set the mug down, black, no sugar, a napkin folded beneath. Other days she'd bring tea without asking, setting it in front of me with a half-smile that said, "You'll regret not sweetening life one day." We didn't talk much about her son, though sometimes she mentioned him in passing. He called, "He's fine." I could hear the relief in her voice each time, the way mothers carry weight even when the child is gone. Once, when the cafe was nearly empty, she sat across from me. The clock on the wall read 8:47 a.m. I remember because that was the moment I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't hoping or holding my breath. I was just there, with her, and that was enough. "You read the same page again," she teased. I closed the book. Smiled. "Maybe it's a good line." This time, she didn't argue. We walked home together once, after she closed early. Just a few blocks. Her steps were steady, mine a little unsure. We didn't touch, didn't need to. At a bench near the corner, we sat for a while, letting the evening slip by in silence. She told me about her husband then, not in detail, just enough. How distance had crept in, how silence had turned sharp instead of soft. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. I listened, and when she stopped, I said the only thing that felt right. "You're not alone anymore." Her hand brushed mine on the bench. Not by accident this time. She didn't move it away. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a declaration. It was something steadier. Earned. Now, months later, I think about the first time she brought me tea. How I almost missed the point. How easy it would have been to walk away before the story even began. But I didn't. And neither did she. Life isn't perfect now. It's just warmer. The silence between us isn't sharp anymore, it's soft, the kind you lean into. This morning, she set my mug down, folded napkin underneath, her fingers tapping once against the handle before pulling back. I caught her eye. She didn't look away. And in that quiet I thought, this is what love feels like when it's real. Not loud. Not certain. Just steady. Something only we would understand.